Welcome to Business 211 Supervision Online with Professor Joe Lane, as we do a little bit of a different delivery here. We have covered Chapter 9, and on this snowy day here in Northeast Louisiana, we're going to begin Chapter 10. Chapter 10 talks about legal, by the way, it's not really snowing. I just want to make sure you were listening. So if you didn't hear me say snowing, cut down whatever else is going on, you're not focusing, okay? All right, it's not a snowy day in mid-March here. Okay, this is a chapter that I always like to do in person because it's always so much fun. This is my sex and drugs chapter, okay? But the official title is Legal Issues, Discipline, Termination, Sexual Harassment, and Drugs. And we've got our supervisor up here that's going to help us get through Chapter 10. We talked in Chapter 9 about workplace conflict and that sort of thing. You know, you want things to work well in an organization. The better job that a supervisor can do to motivate, you remember that definition of supervisor, all the things they have to do. Well, the better they can do that job and know their employees, the better that they're going to perform as individuals and better they're going to perform as a department or an organization. But you know what? Sometimes things happen where employees have to be disciplined. And supervisors, sometimes, that's not fun. If a supervisor really enjoys disciplining their employees, you might take a second look at that supervisor. They probably don't need to be doing that. Most times whenever I've been in a situation where I've had to deal with discipline, it wasn't something I enjoyed. I did it because it's my responsibility, but I didn't take any joy in it. Okay, so let's get started in Chapter 10, Disciplining Employees. Behavior has a negative effect on accomplishing organizational goals must be corrected. So if there's behavior going on in your organization that has a negative effect on your organization's goals, on your department goals or whatever, that negative behavior has to be corrected. Dealing with correcting that negative behavior or that incorrect behavior or that improper behavior, that's discipline. I would think I'd be familiar with what disciplining is. All right. Now, he says there are some fundamental rules or universal rules of thumb that you can use that will help you in disciplining your employees. And when they say universal rules of thumb, that kind of tells me that regardless of the type of business, these rules may apply. So let's see what they are. Number one, and I'll pick it up. I have it here in my handout, but I'll also kind of look at it here, these universal rules. Learn your company's rules and regulations and commit them to memory. You're the supervisor. Any policies, procedures, rules, or regulations that relate to your employees in your department, you need to know them. Number two, get to know your employees and their personalities. It's really important that you know your people. And different people have different attitudes, different perceptions, different values, different personalities. The better you can get to know that employee, the better job you can do of supervising that employee. Number three, prevent discipline problems through education. A lot of times people will get all bent out of shape about something, or it'll be a problematic situation where if they'd have known ahead of time, you can't do this, you shouldn't do this is how we do this, these are the rules, they would have followed the rules and you wouldn't have had the problem to begin with. Set a positive example. In everything that happens, we'll be talking about drugs, we'll be talking about sexual harassment, and everything that happens, the supervisor's role always, or one of their roles, is to set a positive example. And number five, consult the Human Resources Department. Whenever you're disciplining, even if you know the rules and policies within your particular area, as you should, there may be some overarching policies or rules or things for your company as a whole. And anytime you're involved with disciplining an employee, there's some legal issues that are involved. Well, make sure that you get a hold of and you talk with your human resource people. Okay. So those are kind of the fundamentals of disciplining employees. The discipline process. I'd be familiar with those fundamentals of disciplining employees. I'm going to kind of work off of my book that I've got kind of here in the background as well. The discipline process. This is how discipline should go. This is how you should do it. If you don't follow this, you're going to get in trouble and you're going to have problems and you're not do a very good job. Okay. You have a situation that's going to require some discipline. Step number 1, an informal discussion or counseling. Just informally talk to the person. Hey, look. Now you know them, you know their personality, we've already talked about that. Hey, look, just chat with them about something. Let them know it's a problem. Let them know it's not, whatever it is that's the problem, talk with them about it informally. Three times out of 4, that'll solve the problem. Okay, if that doesn't solve the problem, give them a verbal warning. Specifically tell them that you are bringing it to their attention that they have violated this policy and that they understand it. Now, I always think you should get a person to sign a sheet that talks. You give them a verbal warning, sign something that says you have given them a verbal warning. There's a copy of one in here. You say, well, wait a minute. If they got to sign something, it doesn't sound like it's verbal. It sounds like it's in writing, but not really. You're giving them a verbal warning. It's not going to go in their HR files or anything like that, generally speaking. But you are simply acknowledging that you gave them the verbal warning through something in writing. Okay. So a verbal warning is a little more. It's a little more formal than an informal conversation or counseling. Number 3, a written warning. Now this is where you put the warning on paper. You write it out. And you spell out what they've done, why it violates, how you're specific about it. You just haven't been doing well. That's you can't warn a person that you just haven't been doing well. You gotta be specific. Okay. You sign the verbal warning. The written warning. They sign the written warning. Now, probably it's going to have a statement saying, by signing this, I do not say I agree or I disagree, but I do acknowledge receiving the warning. Signed. Now, a written warning normally is going to go in the HR file. Are there exceptions? There's exceptions to just about everything, aside from the fact that I'm a great actor. But, okay, there's just about exceptions to everything. Okay. But generally speaking, a verbal warning with the documentation on it does not go in the HR file. A written warning does. You should have most discipline situations taken care of by this point. However, if you don't, it can lead to suspension. Suspension is the 4th step. Now, suspension with pay is known as a vacation. You're going to, wait a minute now, you don't like what I'm doing, so you're going to make me go home for a week and pay me. I might try that a few more times. So normally suspension is going to be suspension without pay for some period of time. Now that's already done after a written warning, so they know what it is. Suspension without pay pretty much is saying, you know where we're headed on this. You know where we're headed on this. If you're not able to comply. And that's step number 5, dismissal. You let the person go. You terminate that person, step number 5. Now, in a lot of companies, termination has that's why really by the time you hit about step number 4, you should have HR and probably your supervisor involved with this. Not that they're going to do it for you, but they're going to make sure that you're following all the rules. And a lot of times supervisors cannot suspend a person without their bosses or HR giving them authority to do that. And certainly that's true with dismissal. But there are some rights that an employee has when they're dismissed, and they can probably contact Human Resources and go through that appeals process and that type of thing. But of course, the most serious thing within the discipline process is dismissal. It's always, I got too still. Let's see if there we go. I'm not going to get in all out into, since we're not together here, this thing about You know, you've heard, I'll just make a quick mention, you've heard about employment at will. This is an employment at will state. I can fire you anytime I want to. Okay, so you've got, if you've got a scale here, and that's a scale, that's a balance. Over here you've got employment at will. Okay. But also on the other side you have courts and laws and suits. You have had things where people have gone to court to get their job back. They have done things that felt like that their dismissal was not for the right reason. And courts, you build up jurisprudence. I think that's a word. I have to ask an attorney that to be sure. But you build up case law, and case law where people have been reinstated when they have been wrongfully discharged. So the whole idea is, if I could find my red marker, which I can't, so I'll just use the black one. It's what you need to do is, if you're going to terminate, you need to do it for cause. There needs to be a justifiable cause for termination. Now, I'm getting off on a little tangent here. This is just tangent stuff. But when you get down to dismissal, it should be for cause. There are certain things that are for cause. You can dismiss for these reasons. Yeah. And if you do that, you're good. But even in an at-will state, you need to still dismiss for cause. Okay, let me get this off here. I don't want to get crazy with this. Okay. There are times when you may not go through all 5 of those steps. You may go from 0 to step 5. There can be some things within your company that says if an employee is found doing this, if an employee walks in and has a bad day, grabs you as a supervisor and just beats the stuff inside of you, there could be a policy that says if an employee beats the stuffings out of a supervisor, they're terminated. So you don't go through 1, 2, 3, 4, you jump right to 5. It may be in the school business, you have school bus operators. If a school bus operator tests positive for drugs, that school bus operator can be terminated. Because what do? They haul around 45 or 50 precious young lives every day. You just can't have that. But normally, under normal situations, if you want to protect yourself, if you want to do it right, if you want to be fair to your employee, the 5 steps, discipline steps, are what you need to do. And I would know the 5 discipline steps. Now, there's one other little thing our author mentions I thought was kind of important. He said, after you've terminated Tom, you got 13 employees and Tom has been terminated. Should you let the other employees know that Tom's been terminated? Yes. Hey, guess what? They're going to figure it out anyway. Because they're going to say 13? There only tends to be 12 of us. It seems like Tom's missing. So they're going to know it. So just let them. Now, do you let them know why? No. I mean, you don't go into the details. But it's important. Communication, transparency, the word I don't particularly like, but I like the idea behind it. You let your employees know. Okay. All right, so that's kind of the idea. Let me see if there's anything else that I need to do before I get into 6. All right. Fundamental rules of thumb, we talked about that. We talked about what disciplining is. I said you needed to be familiar with what disciplining is. We need to be familiar with the universal rules of thumb. Talked about that a little bit. We looked at the discipline process, and we said we need to know the discipline process, and we need to be familiar with the fact that once a person is terminated, the other employees need to be made aware that person has been terminated. Okay. What can get you in trouble faster than anything else as a supervisor? Sexual harassment. Who can be charged with sexual harassment? Anybody. And within a company, you're going to have someone, normally not your supervisor, a lot of times someone in HR who has been basically designated as the person that you contact in case you feel like you have been sexually harassed. Okay. I always tell students when they're in class, and that's why I kind of miss this. If you wanted to leave class and the next day come to Delta and talk and accuse me of sexual harassment, could you do that? The answer is you could. You could file sexual harassment charges against me. Now, I'm feeling pretty good here they're not going to stick. And here's the reason why. Supervisors need to be, or people that are in situations where they are in charge of others. Supervisors need to be very, very careful not to do anything that would insinuate sexual harassment. So let's get into it a little bit, and we'll probably draw a couple of things on here on the board. And I'm still looking for my red. Sorry, I'm leaving you. I'm coming back. I needed my red pen. My assistant did not bring my red pen to me. I don't have an assistant. I just threw that in. Sexual harassment. Unwelcomed words, actions, or conduct of a sexual nature. Supervisor, employee, employee, supervisor, man to woman, woman to man, man to man, woman to woman, doesn't matter. If it's unwelcome words, actions, or conduct of a sexual nature, sexual harassment. Okay, there's two kinds of sexual harassment. By the way, I want you to know what sexual harassment is. Okay, I want you to know what that is. There's quid pro quo. All right, sexual harassment. Here we are. There's quid pro quo. My spelling has not gotten any better, but since I'm having to actually do it on the board and people are looking at this, I've got to spell it a little bit better just to try to keep my job. Condition of work, I don't like to call it that. I like to call it hostile environment. VIRONMENT, something like that. There's two kinds of sexual harassment. A, B. Oh, by the way, is there a law against sexual harassment? Yes. That law is a part of the Federal Civil Rights Act law. So this is big time legislation. Okay, this is federal legislation. There's two types of sexual harassment. Quid pro quo and what I like to call hostile environment or condition of work. Here's what quid pro quo is. You want that promotion here to assistant supervisor, and I'm the supervisor. If you'll come to the camp and spend the weekend with me, you've got a good chance of getting that promotion, and we ain't going to be fishing. I will exchange. If you are willing to exchange sexual favors with me, I'll give you something at work. Very straightforward. I want something of a sexual nature from you to give you something else that I can give you in my position as a supervisor or as my position at the job. That's quid pro quo. Very illegal. You prove it, you're gone. And you know, you've seen a lot of these sexual harassment stuff, even in the last year or two in the paper, on TV, social media, and that sort of thing. Now, the second type is a little harder to prove. I mean, if this happens and you can prove it, it's a done deal. That's sexual harassment, and what's probably going to happen is you're going to be gone. Condition of work, or I like to call it hostile environment. What does that mean? When you are in your workplace, you should not be subjected to things of a sexual nature that makes you uncomfortable. Okay, we have a department here. And in the department there's 12 people, and you know, each person has a cubicle. And the supervisor has kind of a bigger thing right here at the front of the department. All right. Now you can, if people are loud, you can pretty much hear what's going on because your cubicle only goes up so high. Well, the supervisor and Tom over here, who is in this cubicle, they have the habit every day of the dirty joke of the day. Sexual in nature, the dirtier the better. And so they start over each day with, Joe goes over and tells Tom, what's that their name? Here's the joke. And then the next day, Tom's got to come back with something. So they're always trying to beat each other. You know, the sexier and the better. All right. Is there a good chance that everybody else in this area is probably going to hear that? Pretty good chance. Pretty good chance. Would that make you uneasy that every day you got to hear that? Yeah. Would that possibly be sexual harassment? Could be. Could be. What if a supervisor, you know, a lot of times, day after day, you know, weeks, a lot of times, Joe Lane, the supervisor, comes in and, you know, says to various and sundry employees, Mary, that's a great outfit. You really look nice today. Well, if you were Mary, would you be offended by that? I don't think so. I mean, you'd be hypersensitive if you were. Or if Fred comes in, Fred, well, that's a great outfit. You must be going on a job interview or something. Okay? All right. Probably okay. But what if the supervisor, Mary comes in and supervisor says, Mary, you're looking fine today, Mary. Looking fine. And what if that happens a lot? Susie, hadn't seen anything that short in quite a while. And then maybe every once in a while it gives the person a little pat and has to kind of be careful with that, you know. All right, is that hostile environment? That could very well be hostile environment. Now, hostile environment is not quite as ironclad as quid pro quo. Quid pro quo is sexual favor in exchange for something of work. Hostile environment, when does something become hostile environment? If one time Joe went over and told Tom a kind of an off-color joke, but it wasn't a routine thing, it wasn't done in a real loud voice, but other people heard it, would that be hostile environment? Well, maybe not. Maybe not. If you came into my office to be advised, and I had art all over my office, on the ceiling, on the walls and everything, and that men and women with little or nothing on in a number of different type of exotic poses, would that be sexual? Would that be hostile environment? You betcha. Would you feel weird and creepy if you walked in my office and saw that? Would you hate the next time you saw me walking down the hall? Would you get way away? That's probably hostile environment. Now, if I have a Playboy calendar on my desk, and it's turned towards me, and I've got Ms. March there, because I always like to check what day it is all the time. And there's Ms. March to tell me what day it is. But on the flip side that I've turned over, there's Ms. February. So I have that calendar on my desk, and you come in for advising. Now, you might be able to see that calendar. You might be able to see Miss February. You're not going to be able to see Miss March because I'm watching Miss March. I'm looking at those dates. Okay. Is that hostile environment? Maybe not. It's a calendar. Those can be bought anywhere. I'm not sure that would be hostile environment. But if a number of students came in and a number of students complained, could it possibly be? And the answer might be yes. So here's what I'm saying. Why take the chance? If you want to know what day it is, you put Miss March in the drawer of your desk. And if you want to check out and say, what day is this? You look in the drawer and you close it back up. See the idea? Okay, you get the idea. So I want you to know what sexual harassment is. I want you to be familiar with quid pro quo and condition of work. Sexual harassment can get a supervisor in trouble faster than anything else. And remember this, as a supervisor or as a professor, anybody can file sexual harassment charges against you anytime they want to, whether it's founded or not. So don't do it, and don't even get in the gray area, and then you don't have to worry about it. Okay. Post note, I'm a hugger. I like to hug. Now, coronavirus, I know, 6 feet. But, generally speaking, I like to hug. I mean, hugging and touching and stuff like that comes very natural to me. I don't do that at school. I don't hug students. I don't do that sort of thing because I don't even want an implication of anything. You have to be really, really careful. Okay, let's talk about drug abuse. For the last, just a couple of things about that, and we're done with this session. Drug abuse, is it a problem? Yes, it is a problem. Are more and more companies trying to have policies where they can help people, refer people to drug, for drug treatment and this sort of thing? Yes. There's one thing, and let me grab this and go through. Let me go through that little section here about drug abuse. Does drug abuse cost companies billions of dollars? Yes. Estimates of the cost to employers of drug abuse range between $75 and $100 billion annually, and this was almost 18 years ago. What do you figure it is now? 300 plus billion dollars. You as a supervisor are not a drug abuse expert. Never accuse an employee of being on drugs. Fred, you're on drugs, boy, you're just on drugs. You don't know that. And you can get in trouble. Okay? Now, you can't evaluate whether Fred's on drugs or not. You can evaluate Fred's work performance. If Fred's work performance is suffering and he's not doing things that he needs to do, then the discipline process needs to be coming forward. But if you have a feeling you're closer to Fred, you know Fred's personality better than anybody else. If you feel like Fred's on drugs, there's an appropriate person in your company to contact, probably somebody in HR, and they'll take it from that. So one thing I think I put it in my handout: never accuse of someone of sexual harassment. I'm sorry, back to that. Never accuse anybody of being a drug addict or drug abuse or something like that. You don't know that. You don't know that. What you do is you look at their work performance, and if their work performance is problematic for whatever the reason, you take the necessary discipline steps. But if you really feel like there's a drug situation, refer it to human resources. Okay, I think that's kind of what I want to do with chapter 10. Discipline, we talked about that. We talked about the steps in discipline. Termination, we talked a little bit about that. Sexual harassment and drugs. The only thing that we talked about in drugs, I think, that I want you to be familiar with is never accuse an employee of drug abuse or of using drugs, because you don't know that. You don't know that. So that's chapter 10. We're halfway through 9, 10, 11, 12 that we're going to do for test number 3. So I'm getting ready to end chapter 10. I'll do a clap of the hands and this sort of thing, because Professor Pierce needs to know, that we've taken a break and we're moving to another chapter. Again, the makeup artist, the hairstylist and everything will have to work on me before I get into chapter 11. So we have now officially finished chapter 10. Thank you. See you at 11.